Talk about this. This is bananas, y'all. This comes from Focus on the Family's public statement of concern about Gary and Anne-Marie Ezzo's teaching, particularly Growing Kids God's Way and Babywise. They have, for example, cited Matthew 27:46, my God, why have you forsaken me?" in support of their teaching that mothers should refuse to attend to crying infants who have already been fed, changed, and had their basic needs met. "Praise God," writes Gary, direct quote, "that the Father did not intervene when his son cried out on the cross." Good job, Focus on the Family, for calling this out. This is wild to pull this verse out of context, hermeneutically speaking. Theologically speaking, this does all kinds of problematic things to the Trinity. Perspective of theodicy, how do we respond to evil and suffering? This is a place to land of the indifference and distance of God. But this isn't all they had to say about this. They defend this statement. 1998, Christian Research Journal put out a really in-depth expose and examination of the problems of the Ezzo's teaching. They did a phenomenal job on it. It's still available digitally, and maybe I'll dive into this on Substack or something. They did an excellent job. The Ezzos didn't like this, of course. Growing Families International, they say the Ezzos don't for a minute believe or teach that Jesus hung on a cross to teach us that mothers should refuse to attend crying infants. Rather, quote, "The Father's non-intervention in the suffering of his Son is the ultimate example that speaks against the fraudulent notion that love always requires immediate intervention." I think this really spotlights, in a way that all the reels and deep dives I could do on this will always fall short, how invested the Ezzos were in detached parenting. Any God-given parental intuition that would have raised flags for people was kind of steamrolled by these distorted theologies that really perceived God as detached, uninterested, a distant authority figure, most concerned with his authority being respected, and kind of labeled that love and godliness. The Ezzo's parenting empire is an interesting one. As I've mentioned before, it's one of the few that at the time, during their heyday, they came under a lot of collective critique and some degree of accountability. Professional voices speaking out, pastors, theologians, other parenting people, psychologists, doctors, a number of families who used it were speaking out and sharing their stories, but they still had influence over millions of families. And it got into Christian institutions. There were churches where you couldn't get your kid baptized unless you agreed to go through Growing Kids God's Way. You couldn't enroll in a Christian school unless you agreed to do it. I think we're only on the front end of hearing how harmful this teaching was. Hi, I'm Marissa Franksburt, and together with my co-author Kelsey Kramer McGinnis, we've written the forthcoming book, The Myth of Good Christian Parenting: How False Promises Betrayed a Generation of Evangelical Families.